Okay, good afternoon. Let's start. Already 10 minutes past. So, am I audible? Man, the slides are visible. Anybody else? Please respond. Yes, Abdesh.
Yes, sir. Slide is visual and voice is coming.
Okay. So, good afternoon to all of you. Now, let's start this the another aspect of project management, that is project scheduling. Today, we'll discuss about project scheduling. You please recall in my lecture 8, I had given about the sequence of estimations and the scheduling. What are the different sequences of performing estimations and scheduling? I have told you that first we should estimate size. If size is estimated, from that we can estimate the effort and duration. And once effort and duration are estimated, we can easily estimate staffing or staff level. From effort, we can estimate the cost. Similarly, from the duration, if you know the duration and the staff level estimation or the staff level requirement, we can perform scheduling. Okay. Once we can estimate duration and estimate staffing or staff, then we can easily perform scheduling. Now let's see what do you mean by scheduling? What are the different steps for scheduling? Why scheduling is required? Those are so which are easy things. I will little bit skip those things. You can see from the books. Now let's see the most important things. This is the step-by-step approach I have told you in some of the previous classes. So here, you know, a project is consisted of several activities. So we must have to plan for each activity. So how do we carry out this plan for each activity, which is known as activity planning? If you look at this, the sequence of the steps or the stepwise procedure, this activity planning is carried out at step number 4 and step number 5. Okay, this figure already discussed earlier. You can see yourself. Now let's see a little bit introduction to scheduling. So scheduling the project tasks is one of the very important project planning activities. So let's see the scheduling problem consists of what items? The scheduling problem in essence consists of deciding which tasks would be taken up when and by which person, by which staff or by whom. Once a schedule has been worked out and the project gets underway, then the project manager monitors the timely completion of the tasks. Okay. Once a schedule has been developed, a schedule has been worked out and the project gets underway, the project gets started, then the project manager, he monitors the timely completion of the tasks. And what does he do more? He takes any corrective action that may be necessary whenever there is a chance of schedule slippage. So if you are not, or if the project is not moving according to the schedule that you have prepared, then what the project manager has to do? He has to take some corrective action which will be required when there is a chance of schedule slippage. You are moving away from the prepared schedule. Okay. Now let's quickly look at what are the steps for scheduling. So in order to schedule the project activities, the project manager needs to do the followings. He has to follow the following steps. Number 1, identify all the major activities that need to be carried out to complete the project. Okay, the first step is you have to identify all the major activities which may be required to be carried out to complete the project. So first identify all the major activities, then break down each activity into tasks. Okay, so each activity may consist of several tasks. Okay, so here tasks we can say that normally which cannot be further subdivided, or or an activity which can be completed by within 1 to 2 weeks. So in that way we call that is tasks. So break down each activity into tasks. That means the jobs which can be completed by within say 2 to 3 weeks or 1 to 2 weeks. After breaking down each activity into tasks, then you have to determine the dependency among different tasks. What tasks are interdependent? Like, so task B can be started only after A is finished. Task C can be started only after task B is finished, like this. So See, you know that in a student information system, students can attend the classes only when the registration activity is over. So if you can successfully finish the registration activity, then the classes can be started like this. So determine the dependency among different tasks. Then establish the estimates for the time durations necessary to complete the task. Okay, then you have to establish the different estimates for the time durations, for the time requirements which are necessary to complete the different tasks. Step 5 is represent the information in the form of an activity network. This is very important. So all the tasks we have to represent in the form of activity network. Represent the available information in the form of an activity network. It's just like a graphical structure. I will show an example of activity network. Then determine the task starting and ending dates from the information represented in the activity network. So whatever information you have represented in the activity network, then from that you have to find out what is the start time of the task and what is the end time of the task. Okay, the starting date of the task and the ending date of the task. So for every task you have to find out what will be starting date and what will be ending date. Then after preparing this activity network or this activity network diagram, you have to determine a path in that network. That path we call critical path. What do you mean by critical path? A critical path is a chain of tasks. So basically, critical path means it is a chain of tasks. It is a sequence of tasks which determines the duration of the project. So this will determine what should be the duration of the project. So after identifying the critical path, then you can allocate the available resources to the different tasks. These are the steps you need to follow for project scheduling. So these things I have explained here. So whatever is important, I will just explain. Otherwise, you can read yourself. All these 8 steps we have discussed earlier. So these steps now explained in detail. I have already told you the first step in scheduling a project is what? First step is identify all the major activities. So first step is the first step in scheduling a software project involves what? Identifying all the activities which are necessary to complete the project. Here you might require some knowledge of the intricacies of the project and the development process, which will help the project manager to effectively identify the important activities of the project. Then the activities are broken down into a logical set of smaller activities. So the activities might be larger ones. So the activities may be divided into some logical set of smaller activities, or we can call them sub-activities. So broadly, we can say that the activities in the next step, the activities are divided into some sub-activities. The smallest sub-activities are called tasks. That means which activities cannot be further divided. It is expected that those sub-activities can be completed within 1 to 2 weeks. So these sub-activities are known as tasks. So the smallest sub-activities, they are called tasks, which are assigned to different developers. Okay, so finally, these tasks are assigned to different developers, maybe for coding. Here, a project manager breaks down the tasks systematically. So you should not actually the tasks should not be broken just unsystematically, haphazardly. A project manager, he breaks down the tasks systematically by using a structure called as WBS, or work breakdown structure. Okay, so normally a project manager, he breaks down the tasks systematically by using the work breakdown structure, or WBS. After the project manager has broken down the activities into tasks, then what he has to do? Then he has to find the dependencies that might exist among the different tasks. Dependency among the different tasks determines what? Why do we require to find out the dependencies? The dependencies among the different tasks, they determine the order in which the different tasks will be carried out. In which order which tasks will be carried out. If B is dependent on A, that means the task A has to be completed first, then only B can be started. So the dependencies among the different tasks, they will determine the order in which the different tasks will be carried out. If a task A requires the results of another task B, then tax A must be scheduled after tax B, and A is said to be dependent on B. Okay. If a tax requires the results of another tax B, then what do we say? Then tax A must be scheduled after tax B. Please see. If tax A requires the result of another tax B, then what we should do? Then tax A should be scheduled when? After tax B is completed. And here A is said to be dependent on B. That means tax A is dependent on tax B. So that means when B will be completed, then only A can be started. The tax dependencies that define a partial ordering relation among tax. I hope you have known total ordering relation and partial ordering relation, both sets, partial ordering sets. So I think it is what how we define a or equivalence ordering relation. This you know, partial ordering relation. I think a relation is called as partial ordering relation when it is reflexive, antisymmetric, and transitive. So the tax dependencies they define a partial ordering relation among the different tax. That is, each tax may precede a subset of other tax, but it is possible that some tax might not have any precedence ordering defined between them. They don't depend on anything else. So those tax might not have any precedence ordering relation defined between them. So the tax which do not have any precedence ordering relation, they are called as concurrent tax. The dependency among the different activities, the dependencies among the different activities can be represented in the form of an activity network. We'll take the example of an activity network after maybe in the next class. Once the activity network representation has been worked out, okay, once you draw the activity network, then what you can do, the resources can be allocated to each activity, and the resource allocation can be represented using a chart, very important chart known as Gantt chart. Very often it will require for your industrial career. So resource allocation, finally, it is done using a chart called as Gantt chart. So after the resource allocation is done, then a project evaluation and review technique, which we call as POT, CPM and POT we'll discuss here. After resource allocation is done, a project evaluation and review technique chart representation is developed. The POT chart representation is useful to a project manager to carry out project monitoring and control. So the basic use, the basic usefulness of POT is in project monitoring and control. So, so three important no, I think four important what we can say techniques or tools we have told here. First one is work breakdown structure. This I have already told here that the activities or the tasks will be broken down using the work breakdown structure. Then another I have told activity network, how to draw activity network, that we'll see. Then for resource allocation, we will use Gantt chart. Then for monitoring, project monitoring and control, we will use POT. Okay. Also, we'll use CPM. So these things we'll discuss now. So now let us discuss the different forms such as the work breakdown structure, WBS, activity network, Gantt charts, and POT charts. Okay. We'll start with the WBS. WBS, which stands for work breakdown structure, it is used to recursively decompose a given set of activities into smaller activities. Okay, so WBS is used to what? It is used to recursively decompose. Okay, it is used to recursively decompose a given set of activities into some smaller activities. We'll take an example now. The tasks are the lowest level work activities in a WBS hierarchy. Okay, so at the end, so here what we are doing, we are decomposing a given activity into some smaller sub-activities. The smaller sub-activities are known as tasks. So tasks are the lowest level work activities in a WBS hierarchy. We'll take an example now. They also form the basic units of work that are allocated to the developer and schedule. So they will be the last unit. They cannot be further subdivided. Which one? The tasks. So they also form the basic units of work that are allocated to the developer and they are scheduled. Okay, so we have to schedule the tasks. So they are the basic units of work which are allocated to the developer developer, and they try to break down the project activity into smaller tasks. Let's see the regions. Once the project activities have been decomposed into a set of tasks using WBS, then what you can do? The time frame when each activity is to be performed is to be determined. Okay. Once the project activities they have been decomposed into what? Into a number of what or a set of tasks using WBS, then what we have to do? Then the time frame when each activity is to be performed, when each activity has to be carried out, when each activity is to be performed, for that the time frame is to be determined by us or by the project manager. The end of each important activity is called a milestone. So when one activity is finished, at that time you say that we achieved a milestone. So the end of each important activity is called a milestone. For example, you have your design is completed. After requirement analysis, your design is completed. That means that is a milestone. When all the designs are completed, you have produced the data flow diagrams, UML diagrams, etc. So the next activity will be coding. So when the coding is over, you have written the program, taken the printouts, then that is what you can say then milestone. So similarly, when testing is over, you have designed the test cases. We call that that is called as a milestone. When the test cases are developed, that is called as a milestone. The project manager, he tracks the progress of a project by monitoring the timely completion. So what is the usefulness of the milestones? The milestones are used by the project managers to track the progress of the project. So the project manager tracks the progress of a project by monitoring the timely completion of the milestones. If he observes that some milestones start getting delayed, then what he should do? So the project manager is observing that some milestones start getting delayed. Then he can monitor, he carefully monitors and controls the project of the tasks. He has to do something, he has to take the corrective actions so that the overall deadline can still be made. Because a project is consisted of several activities. One or two activities they get delayed. So the project manager has to take some corrective action so that overall deadline, the total deadline, it should be met. He has to speed up the process, or he has to hire more manpower, or so some corrective action he should take so that he should not miss the overall deadline. The overall deadline should be met. If he observes that some milestones start getting delayed, then he carefully monitors and controls the progress of the task so that the overall deadline can still be met. So this work breakdown structure, it provides a notation for representing the different activities, sub-activities, and the tasks which are needed to be carried out in order to solve a particular problem or in order to develop a project. Each of these items like such as activities, sub-activities, and tasks, they can be represented using a rectangle as a node of a tree. Okay, so this basically work breakdown structure WBS. This is represented as a tree. So each activity or sub-activity or task, they can be represented using a rectangle, which can be considered as the node of that tree. If a tree, then there must be some root node. The root node of the tree is labeled by the problem name. So what is the project name or what is the problem name? So with that name, the root of the tree is labeled. Each node of the tree is broken down into smaller activities that are made the children of the node. Okay. So I have already told you each node may represent an activity or sub-activity. Each node of the tree is further broken down into smaller activities. We call them tasks that are made the children of the node. So each smaller activities, they can be considered as the children of the particular node. It is not useful to subdivide tasks into units which take less than a week or two to execute. Okay, I have already told you, you should go on decomposing one activity till each sub-activity can be completed within 1 week or 2 weeks. Don't further subdivide so that a task will be developed within 1 day or 2 days, nothing like that. So it is not useful to subdivide the tasks into units which take less than a week or two to execute. So finer subdivision means what? A large amount of time must be spent on estimating and chart revision. So if you will go on subdividing an activity into hundreds of sub-activities or tasks, what will happen? That means if you are making finite subdivisions, you have to spend a huge amount of time on only estimating and chart revision. So when you will develop your actual project, so you will be getting unnecessarily delayed. You have to spend a huge amount of time for estimating and chart revision. That's why don't subdivide the tasks into units which take less than 1 week or 2 weeks for execution. This is a simple work breakdown structure I have taken. This example is for developing a compiler project. Just like there is a compiler C. Suppose a new programming language is coming and you have to develop a compiler for that programming language. So as I have already told you, here the project name is compiler project. So that will be the root node. Then I have to see how it can be further subdivided. So developing this compiler project may have the sub activities like requirement analysis, specification, design, coding, testing, writing the user manual also. These are the sub activities. And out of this, I can say that this code can be further subdivided into sub activities like lexical analysis, parsing, code generation, etc. Similarly, testing can be further subdivided into different activities, sub activities like unit testing, integration testing, system testing, like that. Okay. Similarly, design can be divided into different sub activities like what you can say, if any database is there, database design or GUI design or code design, like that. So in this way, each sub activity can be further subdivided into some sub activities. So these so here we cannot further subdivide, we call them as the tasks. So these are the leaf level nodes like lexer, parser, code generator. These are the leaf level nodes. They represent the tasks. It is expected that each of these leaf level nodes, which are the tasks, they can be completed within 1 week or 2 weeks. So now then the question arises, how long to decompose? I have already told you that try to decompose in such a way that the smallest activity can be completed within maximum 1 week to 2 weeks. The decomposition of the activities is carried out until any of the following is satisfied. It should not be an indefinite process. The decomposition of the activities is carried out until any of the following is satisfied. Number 1, a leaf level sub activity or a task, it requires approximately 2 weeks to develop. Maximum 1 to 2 weeks is required by a task or sub activity. If it requires more than that, then you divide. But if it requires less than 1 week, then don't subdivide it further. You stop the decomposition process there. Another condition might be the hidden complexities are exposed. So you do not know what are the complexities while developing a project. You go on dividing. So till all the hidden complexities are exposed. So here, when the hidden complexities are exposed, then you can stop the decomposition process. So the other criteria or the other condition that has to be satisfied is like follows. The hidden complexities are exposed so that the job to be done, it is clearly understood, and that can be assigned as a unit of work to one of the developers. So the particular job, it is clearly understood and it can be assigned as a unit of work, as the smallest unit of work to one of the developers. Another condition may be for stopping this decomposition is like this. The opportunities for reuse of existing software components identified. So you have already developed similar type of thing earlier. You want to reuse. So go on dividing, go on decomposing the project till you identify the opportunities for reusing the existing software components for this present project. Then if this is achieved, then you can stop the decomposition process. So this is how, if any of the 3 criteria is satisfied, then you can stop your decomposition process. Now there are 2 things. Shall I how I should decompose? Shall I do the decomposition till the course level or to a very fine level? Let's see what is the drawback if it will be performed at 2 course level, or what will be drawback if it is performed, the decomposition is performed at a 2 file level. Let us investigate now the implications of carrying out the decompositions to very coarse levels versus decomposing to very finer levels or fine levels. When the granularity of the task is in terms of several months, so by the time a problem or a schedule delay is noticed and corrective actions are initiated, it may be too late for the project to recover. So that's what he's saying. If the granularity is in several months, I have already told you up to what level we should decompose till the task can be completed by 1 or 2 weeks. But if you are putting this granular level of in the order of several months, then what will happen? What will the problem? By the time a problem or a schedule delay you have noticed, then what will happen? And correction actions are initiated or started, but it may be too late for the project to recover because already several months have been passed. In other words, if it is just 1 week or 2 weeks, you should have you are having some time to take the corrective actions. So that's why this what breaking down should not be done to two course level, maybe in the order of several months. On the other hand, if the tasks are decomposed to very small granularity, like instead of doing 1 week or 2 weeks, if you make of 1 day or 2 days, then the milestones get too closely placed. So the different milestones, they will be placed too closely. They will be spaced too closely. This should require frequent monitoring of the project status and entail frequent revisions to the plan document. So if every day you will monitor the project status, you will prepare some diagrams, you will prepare the charts, etc., then it will take unnecessarily so much time. This becomes a high overhead on the project manager because you have to give more time on the planning or preparing charts, etc. So this becomes a high overhead on the project manager, and his effectiveness in project monitoring and control gets reduced. So the project manager's effectiveness in monitoring the project and controlling the project get reduced. So that's why you should not make this breaking down process or decomposition process either at two course level or at two fine levels. So this it should be you should decompose in such a way that each task can be performed within 1 week or 2 weeks. That is the optimum breaking down period. While breaking down an activity into smaller tasks, a manager often has to make some hard decisions. If an activity is broken down into a large number of very small sub activities, then this can be distributed to a larger number of developers. If you are making into some large, not so much large like by considering 1 day, 2 day, but it should be within the job should be completed within 1 week, 2 weeks. So if an activity is broken down into a very large number of very small sub activities, then this can be distributed to a large number of developers. If the task ordering permits that solutions to this can be carried out independently or parallelly, it becomes possible to develop the product faster with the help of additional manpower, of course. Okay, so if the task ordering permits that the solutions to these can be carried out independently, parallelly, simultaneously, concurrently, then it becomes possible to develop the product faster. How? By hiring more manpower. Therefore, to be able to complete a project in the least amount of time, the manager needs to break large tasks into smaller ones, expecting to find more parallelism. However, it is not useful to subdivide tasks into units which take less than a week or two to execute. So you don't decompose the project into different activities or tasks which take less than 1 week or 2 weeks to execute. So always try to decompose the activity into some smaller activities or subtasks, okay, or tasks or subtasks which can take time period of 1 week to 2 weeks to execute. Don't you should not decompose so that the task will take less than 1 week or more than 2 weeks for execution. Now let's quickly look at this scheduling process. Many managers believe that an aggressive schedule motivates the engineers to do a better and faster job, because the managers, they put pressure, they put very aggressive schedule. They think that this aggressive schedule motivates the engineers to do a better and faster job, but it's not always the case. You know that this job will take 2 months, but you will schedule that 1 month I will complete by putting pressure by what hiring more manpower. No, this will rather demotivate your engineers. However, careful experiments show that unrealistic aggressive schedules cause engineers to compromise on intangible quality aspects, also cause schedule delays. If you will put them on pressure, a 2-month job you say that do in 1-month job, then it will affect the engineers. The engineers will try to compromise on the intangible quality of the product. Also, it may just a 2-month job you want to finish within one month. It may also happen that it will lead to more schedule delay, and it may take, instead of taking 1 month, it will take more months than the original schedule. That means more than 2 months. It may take 3 months or 4 months. So that's why proper scheduling is required. Don't make any unrealistic aggressive schedules, and don't you should not think that if I will put aggressive schedule, then it will motivate the engineers to do a better and faster job. Rather, it will slow down the process, and the engineers may compromise on the intangible quality of the aspects. So don't make aggressive schedules. Make proper schedules. So that's why scheduling is very important for project managers. A good way to achieve accuracy is let people set their own schedules. Don't pressurize them. A good way to achieve accuracy is you let the people set their own schedules themselves. Schedule for a large size task may take too long. Okay, if you are preparing a schedule for a large size task, the schedule for a large size task may take too long. The managers need to break large tasks into smaller ones to find more parallelism. So the managers, they need to decompose larger tasks into smaller tasks or smaller subtasks. The managers need to break large tasks into smaller ones in order to find more parallelism. This can lead to shorter development time, and small side tasks help in better tracking. So if you are having smaller tasks, it can lead to shorter development time. The development time will be shortened, and the smaller size tasks, they can help in better tracking of the project. So that's why we should decompose the larger tasks into smaller tasks. I have already told you the decomposition of these larger tasks into or larger activities into smaller sub activities or smaller subtasks can be done using WBS, work breakdown structure. Let's quickly take a small example. Consider a project for development of a MIS, of a management information system, that is MIS, and the project manager has identified these are the main development activities. What are they? Requirement specification, design, coding, testing, documentation, etc. Then he has to prepare a WBS for this work breakdown structure for this MIS. How it will look like this. This is the now the manager is trying to decompose the MIS application into some smaller or sub activities or subtasks. This can be done using a work breakdown structure. This will look like a tree structure. This will look like this. In MIS application, it can be divided into some sub activity like requirement analysis and requirement specification, requirement analysis and specification, design, coding, testing, document, etc. Design can be further divided into many here we have divided into two tasks like database design and graphical user interface design. So like coding can be divided into two parts: database coding for database part, coding for graphical user interface part. Testing can be divided into three types like unit testing, integration testing, and system testing, like that. So in this way, the WBS of the management information system can be constructed. Okay. Then the next activity is the most important thing is activity planning. So earlier we have seen that, or earlier we looked at methods for forecasting the effort required for a project, isn't it? Estimation we have seen, but that is the estimation for what? For the whole project. So in the previous classes we have looked at methods for forecasting the effort required for the whole project. Now a detailed plan for the project must also include a schedule indicating the start and completion times for each activity. As I have already told you, a project may consist of several activities. So now we have to prepare a schedule for each activity, when that activity needs to be started, when that activity needs to be completed, Those things we must do. A detailed plan for the project must also include what? Include a schedule indicating the start and completion times for each activity. So why you will do this? This will enable us to ensure that the appropriate resources will be available precisely when required. Whenever any resource will be required by an activity, that should be precisely available. This is also required to avoid different activities competing for the same resource at the same time. If you can prepare the activity planning, then we can avoid the situation where different activities they are competing for the same resource at the same time, where we are having only one scanner and 2-3 activities they require the scanner at the same time. So but if you can make a detailed planning for an activity, then this problem can be avoided. Activity planning will also help produce a detailed schedule showing which staff carry out each activity. Okay, so which staff carry out each activity, that can be also done easily if we are making a detailed plan for each activity. This will also help produce a detailed plan against which actual achievement may be measured. So if you are making the detailed plan, so this activity planning can produce a detailed plan against what? Against which okay. So the activity planning can produce a detailed plan against which the actual achievement can be measured. Activity planning also produces a timed cash flow forecast. Already this cash flow forecast we have seen in the earlier classes. So activity planning will also produce a timed cash flow forecast. Activity planning will also enable us to replan the project during its life to correct drift from the target. If there is a slippage from the schedule, if you are moving away from the schedule, or if you are moving away from the maybe if you are
class, sorry, whatever.
if you are moving away from the target, then you can okay. If you can if we are moving away from the target, then this activity planning will help us replan the project during its life to correct the drift from the target. If you are moving away from the target, this activity planning will help you in taking remedial actions. Okay, so these are easy things you can read yourself. Like, to be effective, a plan must be stated as a set of targets. Okay, in order to make the activity planning more effective, a plan must be stated as what? As a set of targets, not one target. It must be stated as a set of targets, the achievement or non-achievement of which can be unambiguously measured. So you have to represent the plan as a set of targets, and then you have to decide whether the targets they can be achievable or non-achievable. The achievement or non-achievement of which can be unambiguously measured. The activity plan does this by providing a start and completion date for activity. That's why what we have to do, this activity plan can say whether this is achievable or not achievable. The activity plan does this by providing a target start and completion date for each activity. For each activity, the activity plan sets two dates. One is the target starting date, another is the target completion date or ending date. As a project progresses, it is very unlikely that everything will go according to the plan. Never it is possible. You have set a plan which may be ideal, but actually when you are moving, there are several constraints. So you may not move according to your plan, because tomorrow might be a sudden holiday. Employees will not come. Another employee you have hired, he has got a better job, he may leave your job. So several constraints are there. So it is very much unlikely that even if you have make the plan, as a project progresses, it is very unlikely that everything will go according to the plan. There will be deviations, there will be variations. Much of the job of project management concerns what? Recognizing when something has gone wrong, identifying its causes, and revising the plan to mitigate its effects. That is very important. You have made the plan, but while you are making the progress, while the project is in progress, some wrong thing has happened. So as a project manager, you have to recognize when that something has gone wrong, why it has gone wrong, what are the causes, and how to take some what actions so that its effects can be mitigated. The activity plan should provide a means of evaluating the consequences of not meeting any of the activity target dates and guidance. Okay. The activity plan, it should provide a means for evaluating the consequences or not meeting any of the activity target dates. So if you are not meeting the target dates, then what will the consequence? You should, the activity plan should provide a mean, some way to evaluate the consequences or not meeting any of the target dates. If you are not meeting some of the target dates due to some problems, like some of the employees have left the job or many holidays you have got like that, that's why you are not able to meet the target date, then what will the consequence on the whole project? What will the effect? Whether the client will be very angry, you will there will be severe schedule slippage like this. So you have to find out some way, some means to evaluate the consequences of not meeting the target dates. And guidance as to how the plan might most effectively be modified to bring the project back to target. So what remedial actions you should take? You are already being deviated. So, but what actions, remedial actions you can take so that you can bring the project back to the target? For example, you can hire more manpower. You can say your employees work in overtime or in the evening time beyond the office hours like this. What remedial actions you should take so that you will be able to bring the project back to target? So all those things you can get if you are using activity planning. So if you are using, or if you are following proper activity planning, then you can have the advantages of all those things. You can bring your project back if some wrong thing happens. Quickly, let's say what are the objectives of activity planning. In addition to provide project and resource schedules, activity planning aims to achieve a number of other objectives. Okay, so main objective of activity planning is that it can provide project schedule and resource schedule. Besides that, these are the following other objectives like feasibility assessment, resource allocation, detailed costing, motivation, and coordination. In feasibility assessment, what is the objective? If you are using activity planning, you can answer the question that is the project possible within the required time scales and resource constraints. So you are having some only a few resources, you are having very less time. Is it possible, or is the project is it possible that the project can be completed within the required time scales and resource constraints? Similarly, another objective, resource allocation. What are the most effective ways of allocating resources to the project? In which way you can allocate the resources to project in the most efficient manner? When should the resources be available? Project should be available. The resources should be available much early, or an activity will wait till a resource is available, which will delay the progress. But if you will make the resources available early, we have to pay more. So that's why you have to find out the right time when the resources should be available. When should the resources be available? Detailed costing, how much will the project cost, and when is that expenditure likely to take place? So what the project will cost, okay, what will the cost, and when that expenditure is likely to take place, that thing can be answered if you are making a proper activity planning. Motivation, providing targets and being seen to monitor achievement against a target is an effective way of motivating staff. Okay, if you can make some proper activity planning, you can easily motivate your staff to do better productive work. Motivation, providing targets and being seen to monitor the achievements against the targets is one of is an effective way of motivating staff. So by using or making proper activity planning, you can motivate your staffs to do more productive work. Another objective is coordination. When do the staff in different departments need to be available to work on a particular project, and when do staff need to be transferred between projects? Isn't it? For a project, you require many persons, requirement analysis, designers, coders, testers, and these persons are not only they are taking up only one project, they are assigned to multiple projects. So there must be proper coordination. How you can do this? So if you have developed a proper activity plan, then only this proper coordination is possible. Like when do the staff in different departments, they need to be available to your work or to work on a particular project, and when do the staff need to be transferred between projects. So this is known as coordination. The coordination can be achieved if you are having or you are making proper activity planning. Okay. Now next question arises, when to plan? So planning, it is, please remember that planning is an ongoing process of refinement. You say that we will make plan only once. No, this is an ongoing process till the what project is over. Planning is an ongoing process of refinement. Each iteration becoming more detailed and more accurate than the last, isn't it? Since you are making as the progressively project, you will get more information. The planning can be better. So planning is an ongoing process of refinement. Each iteration becoming more detailed and more accurate than the last or the previous version. Over successive iterations, the emphasis and the purpose of planning will definitely shift. Okay. Over successive iterations, the emphasis and the purpose of the planning will shift towards more correct or more accurate. During the feasibility study and project startup, the main purpose of planning will be what? To estimate the various time scales and the risks of not achieving target completion dates within budget. So I am coming to the first step of waterfall model, or the first step of project development, that is feasibility study. During the feasibility study and the project startup, what is the main purpose of planning? The main purpose of planning is to estimate the time scales and to estimate the different risks of not achieving target completion dates or keeping within budget. If you will not meet the target completion dates, if you will not meet the budget, what will the consequence? That you can you have to find out, you have to estimate. So this can be done during feasibility study. That means you see, during feasibility study also you require planning. Next is, as the project proceeds beyond the feasibility study, the emphasis will be placed upon the production of activity plans for ensuring resource availability and cash flow control. So after this feasibility study, beyond the feasibility study, the emphasis will be placed on what? The emphasis will be placed upon the production of some activity plans for ensuring what? Resource availability and cash flow control. That all the resources required by the different activity of the project, they must be available beforehand. The activities should not wait, and also it will ensure the cash flow control throughout the project until you are getting the final deliverable. Okay, so throughout the project until the final deliverable has reached the customer, monitoring and replanning must continue. You have to monitor the project, you have to make a replan, okay, to correct any drift that might prevent meeting time or cost targets. You may deviate from your schedule. You may not the deadline is coming very near. You are overshooting the cost. So for that, time to time you have to replan. Okay, so that's why it is an ongoing process. It takes several iterations. So when you are thinking that you are moving out of the schedule, the cost is overshooting, immediately replan. So throughout the project until the final deliverable has reached the customer, okay, until the final deliverable has reached the customer, you have to do monitoring and replanning. Monitoring and replanning must be continued to correct any drift that might prevent meeting the target time or deadline or the cost targets. Then you will see that what are the major components of a project schedules. Before the work commences on a project, the project plan must be developed to the level of showing the dates. Okay, before the work starts or commences on a project, the project plan must be developed to the level of showing dates, when each activity should start and finish, and when and how much each resource will be required. You have to say that when each activity should start, when each activity should be finished. So the start dates and finish date you must show. Also you have to show that which activity will require how many resources, how much resources. That also you have to make the plan. So once the plan has been refined to this level of detail, we call it a project schedule. Okay, finding a starting dates, finishing dates, or this how much resources will be required after this, or after making the plan at this level, we call it as a project schedule. Once the plan has been refined to this level of detail, we call it as a project schedule. So creating a project schedule comprises 4 main stages. What are the 4 main stages? First step is produce a plan. Okay, the first step in producing the plan is to decide what activities need to be carried out and in what order they are to be done. That is very important. This is the project. This project consists of say 5 activities, and in which activities they are to be performed, like first requirement analysis, then design, then coding, like that. From this we can construct an ideal activity plan. So once you identify what are the activities, then construct an ideal activity plan. This ideal activity plan is a plan of when each activity would be ideally be undertaken where resources not a constraint. So here that word ideal is there. That means we are having as many number of resources possible, no resource constraints. So that's why if no resource constraint there, what plan we will make, we call that as ideal activity plan. Then after making the ideal activity plan, the ideal activity plan will then be the subject of an activity risk analysis aimed at identifying the potential problems. So then we should consider, or we should think of what potential problems might occur. Then this ideal activity plan will be the subject of an activity risk analysis. This might suggest alterations to the ideal activity plan. So during this analysis, you might have to alter the initial ideal activity plan. Then what is the third step? So first step I have already told you, make this ideal activity plan. Then you subject this ideal activity plan to this ideal activity activity risk analysis. Then the third step is resource allocation. Here the expected availability of the resources might place constraints on when certain activities can be carried out, and our ideal plan might need to be adapted to take account for this. So because I have already told you here, while you are making the ideal activity plan, we are assuming that all the resources are available, no resource constraints. But in practice, there will be shortage. Resources are fixed. So what we have to do, the expected availability of the resources might place constraints on when the certain activities can be carried out, because all the activities are ready. As soon as you will allocate the resources, they will start. So the expected availability, they might place constraints on when certain activities can be carried out, and our ideal plan might need to be adapted to take account for this. So whatever we have made this ideal plan, now we have to change it. We have to modify it in order to accommodate these resource constraints. The final step is schedule production. Prepare the schedule, produce the final schedule. The final step is schedule production. Once the different resources have been allocated to each activity, we will be in a position to draw up and publish a project schedule. So once all the resources have been allocated to each activity, then we'll be in a position to draw up and publish a project schedule. We can draw a project schedule. I will show what are the different forms of drawing a public project schedule. Then we can publish it, which indicates the planned start and completion dates. So this project schedule will indicate what will be the planned starting date and what will the planned completion date for the different activities, and the resource requirement statement for each activity. For each activity, you have to prepare a resource requirement statement. Resource requirement statement will contain what? It will contain what resources will be required for executing that activity. So in this you have seen that creating a project schedule comprises of 4 main stages. First step is to create an ideal activity plan. Second step is subject this ideal activity plan to activity risk analysis. Third step is prepare the resource allocation plan. Fourth step is schedule production. Okay, so these are the different steps for creating the project schedule. So creating a project schedule comprises of these 4 main steps. Yes,
sir.
Yes,
Sir,
please.
is this class for everyone or for those who have some doubt or missed the class, sir?
So this is for everyone because my last class Thursday I have told I will take the class Wednesday at 1:15.
Yes,
Okay, sir. Okay,
yes,
sir.
yes,
Thank
sir.
you,
Okay.
sir.
I have already announced. I have already announced in my last class.
Yes,
Okay.
sir.
Yes, yes.
Please recall because every time I cannot send email. I have already announced in my
Yes,
last
sir.
class.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you, sir.
So creating a project schedule will comprise of these four. All right. So today, let's see the summary. So today's different steps for we have explained the work breakdown structure, or we have explained the concept of WBS or work breakdown structure. We have presented what is activity planning, what are the steps of activity planning, how you can make the activity planning. It consists of 4 stages. I have already shown you those 4 stages or the 4 steps, isn't it? We have shown that activity planning consists of 4 major steps that we have already discussed here. We have also discussed about the project schedules, how you can prepare the project schedules. That also we have told you here. Okay, so we have presented the details of activity planning. Uh, um, so we have discussed about the project schedules. I have already told you preparing project schedule uh, um, consisted of 4 steps. We have seen those. Okay. These things we have taken from these 2 books. Please have a look into this. So thank you very much. Now let us take any questions. Basically, this part is a little bit theoretical, but after that, now I have already told activity network. Next class we'll discuss how to construct activity network, etc. Then the mathematical portion will come. So before going to that mathematical portion, please read these things very minutely. That will help you to understand the next chapters, which are basically mathematics oriented. Yes, any doubt, please?
Sir, I have
Yes,
doubt in the assignment you have given, sir.
yes. Please ask
Sir,
what the doubt.
sir, I'm not able to understand means function definition. The
Yes.
function definition in function definition, the name of function is an operator or not, or the argument which we pass in that the comma which separates the different argument, is that a means operator or not?
Comma is an operator. Comma
Sir, in
is
function
an operator.
definition also.
No. I have told you. See, 2 things I have clearly told. What is the rule for function definition? What is the rule for function declaration? Isn't
Yes,
it?
sir. Yes,
It is
sir.
just simple.
Yes, sir. I have
Huh.
gone through that slide, sir.
Yes, yes. Then what is the problem? It is straightforward.
Sir,
What is the
like sir,
yes.
yes, sir. In one question you have given like means you have given the function int compute GCD and
Yes.
int x comma y. So now
Yes.
I want to ask means compute GCD is like operator or means not?
You tell me the rule first. If you have understood first, tell the rule for
Sir,
function
the
definition.
rule is in function call the operator means the function name is operator and arguments are operand.
Okay, but in function definition,
Function definition, I think nothing means they are not taken as any argument or means operator or operand.
then straightforward apply that rule.
Okay, sir. Okay.
Straightforward that apply. Already I have these are the rules. These are the guidelines. If it is a function definition, this is the guideline. If it is a function declaration, this is the guideline. You have, and accordingly you have to select the operators and operands, isn't it?
Okay, sir. Means sir,
Huh?
function definition in function definition, function name
Yes,
is not is not operator and
correct.
arguments also not
Yes,
operands.
yes.
And sir, what about that comma inside the arguments?
See, if we, again, if you are taking that function definition, these are not operators. So obviously these things should not count, counted as what
Yes,
operand.
yes, sir. Yes, sir. That's fine,
I
sir.
think so. I think so. Just have a look again. You just see this Rajimmal's book. 1 or 2 examples are there. I have already told you, actually these are little bit what always ambiguous things. Many people, they will come with different things. So, but you should do, you follow the guidelines, then whatever answer is coming you right, you will see that thing. Okay. So only try to understand the concept.